My name is Tahereh, and I just graduated with a degree in architecture from McGill University. I enjoy what I do, I love what I do, and I occasionally paint and write as well. I have just returned after finishing my degree to Karachi to spend some time with family, and I will be taking off to Montreal again to continue on with my master's, to apply for my master's. Last October in 2010, I was in Seattle visiting my cousin, and I had stumbled upon across this video, a garden in Shigar, on Facebook. And then as soon as I saw this video, I got super excited. I said, this is a fantastic project. And whenever I see something exciting, whenever I read an interesting article online, I email the article to my friends and loved ones and family. So I sent out this video, a garden in Shigar, to friends and family. And a very close friend of mine, and sort of like my adopted father in Montreal, a man who takes a lot of care of me, a family who takes a lot of care of me, Arif Ali Khan, he said, he had emailed me back saying that I know the lady in the video, Tahereh Sheerazie. And that's when I said, could you please put me in touch with her? And so he did, and I got in touch with Tahereh Auntie. Since then, she has been titled Auntie T, Auntie Tahereh. And she said, if you're in Seattle, Los Angeles is just an hour away. Why don't you come down for an hour? Why don't you come down for 3 to 4 days? So I flew down to Los Angeles, and we spent some time together. And that's when we got a team together, and we said, it's great. Let's just get down to this project. We got a proposal together, and since then I've been interested in this project. There were 2 reasons why I was interested in the project. One, because it wasn't your typical architectural project where you go and you intervene and you execute and you leave. It was a project about community mobilization where you had to get the students, the teachers, the local community members involved. So it was sort of architecture with a sort of a social dimension, and that I found very fascinating. And also, this notion of a teaching garden in Pakistan sort of is an innovative idea, is a new idea, something that hasn't really happened before. So I thought it'd be nice to sort of put my architectural expertise, if I have any, to work, and work with community members to sort of creating a one-of-its-kind teaching garden in Shigar, Baltistan. So as soon as I returned from Seattle back to Montreal, I had sent out an email to friends and family if anybody was interested in the cause, and I gathered a team of sort of 4 people, including myself, Ali Telia, Sara Ali Khan, and Anis Ali Khan. And we started to fundraise with the guidance of, under the guidance of Auntie T. And basically we started off with simple things like a biryani dinner where we had, friends and family come over. We charged everybody $20, and in the evening we raised around $250. And then, we had, I'd bought in some pashminas and all sorts of interesting artifacts from Zena Market, from Karachi to Montreal. We had sales on campus. I mean, 300 rupee pashminas would be sold for 1,000 rupees or $30 or whatever. And that's how we raised our profits. So basically our efforts in Montreal till March or till April, before Auntie T was actually leaving for Shigar, were primarily focused on sort of raising funds and raising awareness. We had a film screening in Montreal where we had students and professors come and discuss the project, discuss this idea of a teaching garden in Shigar, Baltistan. So the team of Montreal comprised of myself, Sara Ali Khan, Anis Ali Khan, and Ali Telia. And the way we divided ourselves was Ali Telia was responsible primarily for managing finances and funds. Anis Ali Khan was working with Mahira Umar and Khalid Umayya in Karachi. They were working on the website. And then we had Sara Ali Khan, who would work on fundraisers and basically thinking of various ways of fundraising. And then myself, I was involved with all sorts of things, jack of all, master of none sort of role. At the same time, sort of managing, various tasks. But I would be primarily involved with Sara, organizing fundraisers. And one of the fundraisers that we had organized was basically we'd cooked a pot of biryani, and we'd invited 20 to 25 friends over, and each would pitch in, $20, and that's how we would raise $300, $400. And it wasn't just sort of, a food event. We had friends come over. We had screened the documentary in our little small living room studio student apartment in Montreal on a wall, and we had discussed the project. Anis Ali Khan had designed these beautiful bookmarks that we gave away at the end of the day as souvenirs. And at the end of the day, it was a really good discussion about the project and the potential the project has. And everybody was extremely supportive of all four of us and the project and the garden at large. So that was really nice. So initially, I knew that I wanted to be in Shigar this summer with Auntie Tahereh, working on the project, working on the architectural aspect of the project, but I didn't have the funds. So I got down to sort of, being able to get the funds to go to Shigar. So I applied for the ambassador fund at the Student Society at McGill University, and they very generously gave me $2,000 to travel to Pakistan and to participate in the project, for which I'm very thankful for. And then, unfortunately, Auntie Tahereh had to leave for the United States of America because her daughter wasn't doing very well. So then I still wanted to go, but I was a bit skeptical and a bit hesitant because I didn't want to be in Shigar by myself. I didn't know the area very well. I didn't know the people. And then finally, fortunately, I was paired with Ibtisam Puya. Ibtisam Puya is an architect based in Islamabad. And both of us had not known each other at all. And we just met a day before we were flying, and we just, gathered the courage and we took off to Shigar. And that's how we all got to Shigar, and we began work. And day one, we just started work. So when we got to Shigar, we were there only for 3.5 weeks. So we didn't have much time, and we had to get right down to work. So the way we divided our tasks was that Ibtisam was primarily responsible for for architectural detailing, for working with construction workers, while I, on the other hand, I was working with the community members. I was working with students. I was working with teachers. I was working with various activities with the students, at the same time helping Ibtisam with architectural details. And both of us sort of, always participated in discussion about finalizing the plans, finalizing the design. But let me tell you that, the designs were very much, the students participated in the design sort of process, and it is their design at the end of the day. So really, working on site in the morning from 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock to like 8 p.m., coming home late at night, then working in the office, getting office work done, and then going to bed, and again, the same drill the next day. But it was it was an intense trip. When I got into Shigar and when I first had my meeting with the children, with the students, as I must say, with the teachers, I didn't immediately form a judgment. But one of the exercises we had done with the students was, that implement your designs, your drawings. They'd all drawn these wonderful drawings of the garden and implement them on site. And one of the students very sensitively had used, and they designed this small pond in one of their designs, and she used glass as a means to represent water, which I thought was very intelligent and very sensitive. And that is when I had started to understand that these are students who are extremely sensitive to their surroundings, who, their minds work in fabulous ways. And that is when I could tell myself that this was going to be an exciting process. And I had full faith in the students and the teachers and the community members I was working with. And that's when I began to thoroughly enjoy my stay there. Well, when we got there initially, what we witnessed was a barren piece of land. So our first exercise with the students was we had asked each and every student to sort of draw their version of the garden, what they would like in a teaching garden. Then after that exercise was done, then we divided the entire student body into 9 various groups, and each group had a leader. Each group chose their own name. For example, Group Chambeli or Group Chinar or Group Apricot. They had to choose a name that was related to the garden. And then, after all their drawings came together, each group was asked. We divided the entire site into a 25 feet by 25 feet grid, and then each group was asked to operate within a square. and the results were astonishing. They were fantastic. All sorts of, I mean, there was an amalgamation of ideas. The entire site came to be like a bohemian installation with all sorts of interesting things protruding out, chalk shapes on ground. So that was very fascinating. I mean, if you could just leave the entire garden like that, it in itself would sort of provide itself as an art piece. So then, we studied those designs thoroughly, Ibtisam and myself, and then we said, what could be included? I mean, this is their garden. This is not our garden. This is their garden. This is their design. And, we saw traces of a cricket pitch. We saw traces of a pond. We saw traces of all sorts of interesting organic pathways, of channels. And these are design elements that the students, I must say, have contributed themselves, and they're very much part of the design now. Then after that, we took a bit of a digression. We asked the students to do some architectural work. We asked them to design bird boxes for the garden, and the results, once again, I mean, were extremely, fascinating, if one may say so. I mean, they designed these beautiful bird boxes out of wood, and then some made their bird boxes out of shak. Which is basically a traditional Balti way of building. We all proceeded working towards the final show and tell. So we had students prepare, each group prepare various skits. Each group was given a topic like, pollination or like the water cycle. And they had to use means in the garden to sort of put together a skit which they would finally present. So I was, primarily involved with various activities with the students, while Ibtisam would be able to sort of amalgamate all this information that the students had provided to her on ground. And then, we had come together with a final design plan, which then the students then actually also imprinted on the ground. So each group was divided, was given a various area in the garden, and then they had to take curbstones and sort of lay them out on the ground. So the ground, as of now, as we speak right now, actually has the entire naksha on it, which has been done by the students themselves. So when you go to the garden right now, you'll see the entire naksha. You'll see where the sundial is, you'll see where the pond is, you'll see where the rock climbing area is, you'll see where the apple orchard is, you'll see where the cricket pitch is, you'll see where the rainwater garden is. So all these elements have been imprinted on the ground by the students themselves. I must acknowledge that the site isn't very big, but I think what's intelligent is that we've tried to, students themselves wanted to accommodate various features on this small site. They wanted space for recreation. At the same time, it would provide itself as a space for learning. So the garden primarily has a stage which will be used to perform skits. अकबर की कहानी हो गई, आपने हिस्ट्री में जो पढ़ा है उसका आप स्टेज पे कैसे इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं? How do you understand that? Stories from literature, how do you understand those? The garden has a cricket pitch because all the boys in the school requested a cricket pitch. It has a badminton court at the far end, the first of its kind. It's the first badminton court, I think, in Shigar or even in Baltistan. In the Skardu region, if one may say so. So that's sort of the recreational bit. Then it has sort of this entire section that's called the kitchen garden area. That's where it'll have sort of a greenhouse. It'll have a kitchen that the students will use to cook various products, and then because the road after the school leads to K2, there'll be various tourists that'll be passing by. And I think it's always nice, for a tourist to stop by and sort of, buy an apple pie that has been sort of cooked baked by the students of the Abruzzi School. So that's the purpose of the kitchen. And then you have all sorts of plants for the study of botany and biology. You have a sundial for the study of the sun and sort of the north, south, east, and west. You have a pond for the study of sort of water and fish and aquatic animals. Then you have there's an entire section. There's a rock climbing section, Abruzzi himself was a rock climber, and the school has been funded by Abruzzi. So we thought it'd be nice to sort of have a little tribute to him. So students from all over Pakistan can come in for a rock climbing competition, if one may say so. There's that, and there's the apple orchard. There are reading spaces. And then there's the solar system. So there are various sections of the garden that can be used for both for recreation and for learning. And we didn't just want to put together a teaching garden or a recreational garden, but rather a mix of two. so that students can enjoy their learning in the garden. It becomes a sort of an open laboratory, if one may say so, like an outdoor classroom where you learn by doing, and that's the primary concept of the project. Initially, the plan was designed by 5 Shigari women who were working with Auntie Tahereh, and they were part of something called the Women's Social Enterprise. And Auntie Tahereh was sort of their mentor, and she was counseling them and she was mentoring them on landscape design. And they had come to that at the end of it. I think at the end of the internship, they come up with this beautiful sort of design for the garden. And then the sort of the project, was dormant for a while. And then, when we picked it up, we decided that we wanted the students to sort of hold authority over the design and the construction of the project. We still have that plan, but when we went in this time, when we went back to Shigar this time, we wanted to see what the students had to say. And sort of the entire design process went through sort of a revival of sorts. And the current plan has been designed by the students of the Abruzzi School. It is their project, it is their garden. The final plan has been, brought together by Ibtisam and myself, but the design elements have been very much decided by the students themselves. So I don't want to say that we've drastically sort of changed the plan of the girls who worked with Auntie Tahereh. In essence, their plan very much does exist, but it's got more of a childish flavor to it now. It's more organic, and it's less of straight lines, and it's almost it has become a space of discovery and learning, and full of surprises. That's how the design has evolved, if one may say so. I think this is one of those obscure projects that, I'll be very honest, I don't know if I love or hate, but deep down inside, intuitively somewhere inside, I know that I'm extremely passionate about it. Every day I wake up in the morning and I tend to, almost judge myself, and I'm trying to decide if I really love or hate this project. But I think there's something fantastic about the way this project works, and I'll tell you why. Because this project, the people actually heading, I don't want to use the word heading actually, assisting the Shigar community in helping them build this project. We come from all sorts of places in the world. Auntie Tahereh lives in Los Angeles. Myself, Anis, Sarah, and Ali, we live in Montreal. Then there's Mahira, who lives in Karachi, and then her brother Khalid, who sort of assists us from time to time. So we really haven't really met in one space under one roof ever. And I think that's truly fascinating. And to be able to communicate via emails for a project that is not in our close proximity. It's somewhere in some far-flung area in Baltistan and Shigar. Beautiful to say the least. But so I think that's really fascinating for various people to come together for a cause, people who really haven't never met, and to be passionate about a cause just because they have seen this one documentary titled "A Garden in Shigar," and they feel so strongly about this that they're ready to sort of dedicate their time towards the cause. That's one of the reasons why I think this project is extremely fascinating. And the other is the project itself. You never really hear about a teaching garden in Pakistan. This is the first of its kind. And why Shigar? People have asked me, why Shigar? Why not Karachi? Why not Lahore? Why not Islamabad? Because I do think that it would be more difficult for the Shehri Babu to sort of adapt to a project like this. People in Shigar and Baltistan are already so acquainted and already so close to nature that I feel like a teaching garden in Shigar would be able to serve them better, and it would be easier for them to learn. I think eventually, yes, this is a pilot project, and inshallah, if it does work, it works, and we would all be very happy. But yes, we do have plans of implementing the same idea in the city. But I think for this project to happen in Shigar, in the middle of nowhere, in a small village called Siankor, which is actually 10 minutes away from Shigar, is fantastic. And for the community to be so receptive of the idea, and to be so excited, the Shigar town management, the local Raja, the local community members. We would work with students, the Abruzzi School students, from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. to 3 o'clock. But then post 3 o'clock, the local Mohalla kids would come in. And these Mohalla kids would be so excited about this idea, and they would come and help us till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, help us, putting the naksha down on the ground, help us measuring water levels on ground, help us, with all sorts of construction on ground. So I think it's just really fascinating for the people of Shigar, for this project to be happening in Shigar, and hopefully it'll do wonders for the young of Shigar. it's become extremely chilly in Shigar, and normally the various NGOs that work in Shigar, they stop work in November because that's when it gets cold and it starts to snow, and then you resume work in March. So that's what we plan on doing. We have a contractor there in Shigar. His name is Wazir Anwar. He's a fantastic contractor. He gets the job done. An 18-year-old young boy who's extremely talented and wants to be a footballer one day. So as we speak to you right now, he's actually getting the job done. The stage is complete now, and I think we will begin soon. We will soon begin paving the pathways on site. But I think construction is going to stop in November, and then Auntie Tahereh will return to Shigar in March for a couple of months. I might go back. I don't know that of us yet, but Auntie Tahereh is going to return, and we will continue working. But it's not only about constructing, the garden on site. It's also about, the process is a lot slower because you have to sort of convince the local community. You have to work with with the students of the Abruzzi School. So that takes some time. And I'm hoping that in another sort of 2-3 years, the project will complete itself. The other dimension of the project is also that it requires sort of major changing of the curriculum, how to integrate the garden in the curriculum, and that all of it is happening. Auntie Tahereh in Los Angeles is attending all sorts of workshops. She's doing her research. So I think between now and March, it's research time for the Abruzzi School Garden team here in Karachi, Montreal, and Los Angeles. The Montreal team will continue to fundraise. And we do need funds. This is a project that sort of lives on sort of generous funding from fantastic donors. So that's our plan until March, and then March we'll get back into action on ground. It's fascinating. This is the Abruzzi School, higher secondary school in Shigar is known as the best school in Shigar. You've got the creme de la creme of Shigar coming to the school, and it's one would expect that the students would sort of hesitate from being involved in any sort of construction on site, but they were so ready for this. They said this is, and I kept on reiterating to them that this is your garden. This is not our garden. This is not our project. This is your project. And eventually, I think by the end of it, they really understood that this was their piece of land. This was their baby, and they really had to take ownership of this project. You'd be surprised to see both boys and girls alike, constructing on site, digging the ground, planting all sorts of things, putting in stones. And there really was a sense of sort of a camaraderie, if one may say so, on site between the students, because they really took ownership, in terms of construction, in terms of designing, and inshallah, in terms of implementing now, planting, and, for it to sort of, also maintaining the garden. So I think the students are very excited and they're very sensitive, and I think they now understand the idea that they will learn, and this garden will blossom into something beautiful, and it will inform their futures in fantastic ways. So if Iftisam and myself had decided that at the end of a 3-week stay there, we would plan sort of a mini inauguration of the concept, not of the garden, but of the concept in Shigar. And we'd organize a show and tell by various groups of the student body who would perform various skits, songs, dances. And the results were fantastic once again. We had a group, perform to the Four Seasons. And then we had another group that actually used the space in the garden to sort of, discuss this idea of the solar system. It was very interesting. On the day of the show and tell, which was the 3rd of October, early in the morning, we had all gotten to site, and the group that was allocated the topic, the solar system, I saw them, making these little concentric circles on site with green chalk. And I said, "What are you up to?" And they said, "Oh, sir, we have a performance for the solar system." And what made me so happy was that they took the initiative themselves to do this. I didn't tell them to do this, nor did Iftisam tell them to do this. They took the initiative themselves to do this in the morning, and I think that was the group that was awarded the best performance. And then there were other groups. There was another group that did a little performance on the growth of a plant. And what was interesting is that during that performance, he used, and this is when you really get a probe into the student's mindset. I mean, they have wonderful, minds that are curious and extremely fascinating. The student used a mirror to use a reflection of the sun to show sunlight. What was extremely fascinating is that the student used a mirror to represent sunlight because they used the reflection from the sun as a means to sort of depict sunlight. And that is when I thought to myself that once again these students are extremely sensitive. They're sensitive to their surroundings, and they're thinking. These are students who are thinking, and they're thinking in all sorts of wonderful ways. So the performances were outstanding, and they blew us all away. Then we had a student girl actually from the Abruzzi School who recited a poem that she'd written herself titled "Main Bhi Baag Hoon," which was actually quite touching and very sensitive. There was a tilawat, and even the tilawat was so sensitive. They'd chosen verses from the Quran that spoke of gardens and trees and birds and waters. So that was very inspiring. And in the end, we were attended by the local minister of Baltistan. We had Raja Sahib, the Raja of Shigar, come in. We also had a parent come on stage and sort of narrate a story. We made sure that every aspect, various kinds of people were involved in the process. Parents and teachers. We had a teacher come on stage and deliver a speech. We had Ibtisam, come and discuss the very idea of the garden on stage. So it was sort of an amalgamation of various things, on that day, which was very nice. But it was most inspiring to see these students, come up with all sorts of wonderful things and using the gardens as a means to perform. I think one thing I did learn from the experience is do not underestimate the other. Do not underestimate the other. The opposite person, you might be helping someone, but the opposite person is a kernel of creativity. They know all sorts of things that you don't know, and you have to be willing to accept that. And they themselves know their community well more than you do. For you to think that, oh, but I'm not sure they know this. No, they very well do know what you're talking about. They do understand what you're talking about. They're receptive to new ideas. They want change. They want to bring about change. And they want to take ownership of their own land. And this is a great way of doing that for the young of Shigar. Well, now that when I return to Montreal, and we'll get back with Anisa and Ali, and I think they have been fundraising and discussing various ideas while I've been in Karachi. But when I go back, we continue to have various fundraisers and dinners and various talks at various universities in Montreal or in the wider Canadian region to sort of promote the cause and promote awareness of the cause. There's so much to know, especially after this entire summer stint. Coming right back from Shigar, there's so much to share. And I think those who are interested in the cause, friends and family in Montreal or in Toronto, must be updated as to what's happening. And we will continue to fundraise, continue to raise awareness. And it's not something that you just, get done and, you go dormant. You have to continue to sort of live and breathe and do these things. And that's how the garden will continue to blossom and flourish. Living in Shigar was, I have to say, exciting, scary, very, very basic. And we were living in the hospital quarters, and the doctor was very generous to sort of to give us accommodation. We survived on dal naan and aloo gasal and naan all the time. We would always keep a bottle of achar pickle on us handy, dipping naan in achar all the time. And we wouldn't. The water that we receive in Shigar is not clean water. It's muddy water. It's not unhygienic, but it's just muddy water. We had no other option but to sort of bathe in muddy water. That might have resulted in various infections on my body now. But I think it's your little moments. For example, that really made my experience so unique in itself. for example, I think the night before the final show and tell, when we were on site and we had to finish the construction of the stage, we had a deadline, and the construction, it was 6 p.m. and the construction workers needed more time, and it gets dark very early in Shigar, and we hadn't arranged for electricity, and there was no electricity. That was a bit of a process, and finally we had a little sort of a tiny light bulb, dangling in midair, this white light bulb, and we all sat together on the stage under the stars late at night. It was like 10 p.m. and we all ate sort of gosht ka shorba and naan, and we spoke and we laughed, and it was just fantastic. And the construction workers got back to work after. It was little moments like those that really sort of defined my experience in Shigar. And the people I was working with, people in Shigar are so patient, they're so fabulous. I feel like they're living in the 15th dimension, where a less hurried time takes over, there's no rush for anything. And that's what I love about the Baltis. I think they're living more than us Shehri Babus. They're really living the life. People primarily come to Shigar to see the Shigar Fort or venture out to K2. But I think what people don't realize is that there's a lot more to Shigar. You have to get to know the local Shigaris. You have to sort of really venture out into the local hamlets and villages. There's so much to see. There's so much to know, and just sort of just talk to the Shigaris. I mean, they have so much to share. They have so many folk stories, and the Shigaris at heart, as Auntie Tahereh would say, they're primarily poets. I mean, all the time you'd be hearing all sorts of naats and hums, and I mean they're just so poetic in their conversations. I mean, they know their Iqbal, they know their Ghalib, they know their fairs. They love nature. They're always surrounded by nature. I mean, to a certain extent, they take their mountains for granted. I don't think they'll ever be able to live in the city, because I think it's kind of fantastic that they're surrounded. It's like heaven on earth. You're surrounded by paradise. What more do you want? The only reason why I love this project so much, because I do think that it's unique in its own way. It has so much potential, so much potential. And only because the students and the teachers and the community members themselves are so excited about the project. If they were not that excited, we would come, we would do this project because we thought it was great and we would leave. But it's not about that. It's because the students themselves find this project very exciting. I think it's the first kind of project, first of its kind in Pakistan. And inshallah, once it does blossom into something great, I think it'll do wonders for the young of Shigar. And once this pilot project is complete and is successful, and if we implement this scheme somewhere else, I hope that this notion of a teaching garden will do wonders for the young of Pakistan, because it is a new way of learning. It's a way of sort of being connected to the environment, to the natural world around you. And what's a better way of learning? Why not?